Slave plays at the master's ball. That night the master's wife came to see him. The music from the big house always had a strange way of drifting through the night air, like it wasn't meant for the people inside at all, but for the ones listening from a distance. Noah had heard that music since he was a boy, violins, laughter, the clinking of glasses, but tonight it felt different, sharper, more urgent, more like a warning than a celebration. He stood at the back entrance, straightening the simple vest he had been given for the evening. It didn't fit him right, too tight around the shoulders, but that never mattered. Clothes were not for comfort, they were for obedience. One of the older servants, a thin man with tired eyes, pushed the door open and nodded for Noah to enter. "Keep your eyes down," the man murmured. Tonight of all nights. Noah didn't ask questions. He stepped inside, letting the warmth of the house swallow him. The hall was alive, glowing lanterns, polished floors, round tables dressed in white cloth. White guests moved like drifting clouds of silk and perfume, their words floating above Noah like something he wasn't meant to hear. He moved silently, tray in hand, weaving through the shadows at the room's edge. He didn't look at anyone directly, but he saw everything. He saw how tightly the master's jaw was clenched behind his forced smile. Thomas Hargrove was not a man who enjoyed gatherings, but tonight he pretended well enough. He laughed too loudly, gripped shoulders too hard. Every time he turned away, something cold and calculating flashed across his face. And he saw her, Evelyn Hargrove. She was at her husband's side at first, wearing a pale blue gown that shimmered when she moved. Her hair was pinned with pearls that caught the lantern light. She smiled when spoken to, nodded when expected, but her eyes never stayed on anyone long. They darted, searched, flinched when someone called her name too suddenly. Noah didn't mean to notice her so carefully. It was dangerous to notice the mistress in any way, but she seemed wrong, like someone carrying a scream under her ribs. Once, as Noah placed a tray on a side table, she passed by. Her perfume was light, something like garden air, but her steps were quick, nervous. She wasn't walking as someone enjoying a ball. She was walking as someone escaping something. Noah kept working, but he saw her again 15 minutes later, standing near one of the tall windows. She was pretending to watch the musicians, but Noah saw her eyes slip toward her husband. Thomas was speaking with two men near the fireplace, his gestures stiff, irritated. Evelyn's fingers tightened around her wine glass, knuckles pale. She mouthed something to herself, a single word. Noah didn't know what it was, but he knew fear when he saw it. Hours passed. Guests talked and drank and spun across the floor. Noah moved from group to group, refilling glasses, clearing plates, staying invisible. He was used to invisibility. Tonight it felt heavier, like the house wanted him unseen for reasons he didn't yet understand. Twice, he caught the overseer watching him from the doorway. A small, assessing stare. Not hateful, not friendly, just watching. Noah pretended not to see. The last song came late. The ballroom dimmed as candles burned low, their flames bending each time a door opened. Guests swayed in slow circles, whispering things they'd forget by morning. Noah swept through the room picking up empty glasses while his thoughts wandered to the quarters. His mother's soft humming, the warm smell of stew, the quiet that settled after a long day. But the back of his neck tingled, the way it did before storms. Something in the air was shifting. He felt it strongest when Evelyn crossed the floor again. She paused only a moment to murmur to one of the other ladies, but Noah could tell she wasn't really listening. Her eyes never lifted, yet she moved like someone who felt the walls closing around her. Twice, she nearly bumped into passing guests. Her hand shook when she reached for her glass again. It startled Noah when her gaze flickered toward him. Not at him, just toward the space where he stood. Like her eyes were pulled there by instinct alone. Then she looked away so fast it was almost a flinch. Noah lowered his head again. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew enough to keep out of sight. When the ball ended and the guests drifted into the night, the house seemed to exhale. Music faded. Lanterns dimmed. The halls emptied. Noah gathered the last plates and lined them neatly in the kitchen, waiting for dismissal. The master entered briefly, tossing instructions to the servants without meeting any of their eyes. His mood had changed. His face was red, his movements twitchy. He muttered something about locking his study before he left the room. Evelyn never appeared. Noah was released shortly after. He stepped outside into the humid night, grateful for fresh air. The cicadas buzzed their moonlit songs. Somewhere distant, thunder murmured. He walked the familiar dirt path toward the quarters. Lanterns from the big house glowed behind him like tired stars. The celebration was over. The air was quiet. Too quiet. Halfway to his cabin, he heard footsteps. Not heavy. Not slow. Light. Quick. Almost. Frightened. Noah's instincts tensed. He turned carefully, not wanting trouble, and saw her. Evelyn Hargrove stood several feet away, her pale gown brushing the grass, her chest rising with shallow breaths. The pearls in her hair were uneven now, one nearly falling out. Her eyes darted toward the house, then back to Noah as if she expected someone to grab her from behind at any moment. He froze. Nothing good ever came from a mistress approaching a slave alone at night. Her voice came out in a whisper. Please. I need to speak with you. Just for a moment. Noah kept his distance. Ma'am, if you need the overseer. No, she said quickly, too quickly. Not him. Not anyone else. Her voice cracked over the last words. She clutched something tightly to her chest. A folded cloth, dark, worn. Noah couldn't see what was inside, but whatever it was, she held it as though it weighed more than stone. I shouldn't be out here, she whispered. And you shouldn't be seen with me. But I didn't know where else to go. Noah didn't move. Ma'am, you need to go back. If someone sees. That's exactly why I came now. She cut in, breath trembling. When no one will. Lightning flickered in the far distance, a silent flash that carved her outline in blue air. Noah stared at her for a moment longer. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. She looked like someone carrying the kind of secret that could ruin lives. He finally nodded once. Not here, he murmured. Too open. She followed him along the side of the yard to the shadow of the tool shed, where the lanterns from the big house didn't reach. The grass there was tall enough to brush their legs. The night wind rustled through it like whispered warnings. Evelyn's hands trembled as she unfolded the cloth. Inside was a leather-bound ledger. Noah felt his stomach knot. This belongs to my husband, she whispered, and you must see what's inside. Noah shook his head immediately. I ain't allowed to touch a master's. You must, she insisted, her voice desperate. Because it concerns you. And the others. All of you. He hesitated, then carefully opened the ledger. Even in the weak lantern light she carried, he could see names. Dozens. People from the quarters. Some names crossed out. Some marked with X's. Some circled. His own name circled twice. The breath left his chest like someone had struck him. He planning to sell folks, Noah murmured. And he ain't telling nobody. Evelyn swallowed, her voice barely stable. He plans to sell half the quarters at month's end, quietly. Without warning, families will have no time to prepare. She shut her eyes. He doesn't care. He just wants the money. Noah's hands trembled as he held the ledger. Memories of his little brother, sold at 9 years old, flashed in his head. His mother screaming until her voice broke. Noah helpless. He thought he'd buried the pain. But seeing names of children, mothers, elders, all written like numbers, cracked something open inside him. Why you showing me this? He asked quietly. Why me? She took a shaky breath. Because there's more. Something even worse. He stiffened. Worse. She nodded, glancing back toward the big house as though expecting someone to appear. Your name isn't just circled, she whispered. He wrote a note beside it. He thinks you've been watching me. Noah's heart lurched. What? I ain't. I never even look. I know, she whispered. But he's convinced himself you did something. Or that you want something. And when my husband convinces himself of something, she swallowed hard. He wants to make an example of you, publicly. In 2 days, Noah went still. He didn't feel fear. Not at first, just a cold kind of emptiness. Then she pulled out a smaller paper from her sleeve, creased, rushed handwriting covering it. This, she whispered, I found hidden beneath his desk. He's planning something bigger than a sale. He's planning a demonstration. A punishment meant to frighten everyone on the plantation. The storm rumbled in the distance, low and restless. Noah looked at the paper again, looked at the ledger, looked at the mistress, her face pale, her eyes bright with terror. Why you telling me? Noah asked softly. Why not tell someone else? Because, she whispered, voice barely holding, I think he suspects I know. And if he does, I'm not safe either. Lightning flashed again. I need your help, she said. Not for me. For the others. For everyone whose name is in that book. I can't stop him alone. Noah stared at her, heart pounding, torn between fear and fury and something else. Responsibility. A weight he never asked for but now held. What exactly you want from me? He asked. She inhaled deeply, gathering courage like someone gathering broken glass. I need you to help me stop him, she whispered. The distant thunder answered her, and Noah knew this was only the beginning. The days that followed the ball moved strangely across the plantation, slow at times, then tense without warning, like the place itself was waiting for something to snap. Elias felt it more than anyone. He'd grown up reading danger in the smallest things. The way the master slammed a door, the sharp crack of a riding whip on a distant field, even the way the wind moved through the cane. But this time the danger had a face, Jonas Harwood. Jonas hadn't spoken a word to Elias since the night of the ball. Not a greeting, not an insult, nothing. It was the silence that felt dangerous, the kind a man used when he was keeping his anger tucked behind his teeth. Elias avoided the big house as much as he could, but orders were orders. Mariah, the head housekeeper, sent him to clean the east corridor one afternoon. Just keep your head low and your work steady, she whispered, handing him a bucket. As Elias climbed the steps, he caught the faint echo of Mrs. Harwood's voice spilling from behind a cracked door. It wasn't laughter, and it wasn't anger either. It was the trembling edge of someone trying hard not to break. He froze out of instinct, not curiosity. Her voice sounded wrong. Jonas stepped into the hall, his boots hitting the floor with a heavy, deliberate rhythm. I told you not to worry over that nonsense, he snapped at his mother. You don't need to go digging where things are already settled. Settled. Their voices fell to a hush after that, but the words stuck under Elias's ribs. He kept moving. Standing still in a place where a white man walked was asking for trouble. Hours later, when the rainstorm began rolling in, Elias was helping latch the shutters along the back of the house. The wind had the trees bent sideways, and thunder crawled across the sky like rolling boulders. Storms always made the younger slaves nervous. Wind meant falling branches, ruined crops, and sometimes whipping weather that turned fields into death traps. Mariah rushed out the kitchen door. Elias! Mrs. Harwood's in the west storeroom, and a beam fell against the door. I need someone strong. Now! The west storeroom was on the far side of the house, half out of sight of the main hall. Elias didn't know how Mrs. Harwood got herself stuck, and he didn't have the time to wonder. Rain lashed sideways as he rounded the corner, his shoes sinking into thick mud. The wind felt like a living thing shoving him backward. He pushed through it until he reached the warped wooden door, where faint banging sounded from inside. "MRS. Harwood?" he called. Her voice came back thin and muffled. "I can't move the board. Something slipped when I came in." Elias braced his feet, wrapped both hands around the jammed plank, and pulled with everything the storm hadn't already taken from him. The board budged. He kept going. Wood snapped. Mud splashed. The door creaked open just long enough for Mrs. Harwood to slip through, her dress torn at the hem from where something inside had caught it. Her hair clung wet to her neck. "You're hurt?" Elias asked, because she was gripping her wrist. "It's nothing," she insisted, but in the dim light he could see the swelling. Just twisted when I fell. A gust slammed against them, sending leaves and dirt spiraling. Elias steadied her elbow, not holding, just keeping her from losing balance. "We need to get you inside," he said. She nodded, breath trembling. "Lead the way." They ran along the wall, fighting the wind. Elias stayed a step behind so she wouldn't slip. When they reached the side porch, Jonas appeared at the top of the steps as if the storm had carried him there. His eyes narrowed, not at her, but at Elias. "What's this?" he barked. Mrs. Harwood stepped forward before Elias could speak. "A beam fell. I was trapped. Elias helped me, nothing more." Jonas looked from her torn dress to Elias's soaked shirt. The silence stretched too long. "You," Jonas said, pointing at Elias with a stiff finger, "go to the quarters until I call for you. And wipe that mud off before you drag it across the porch." Elias didn't argue. He ducked his head and backed away, rain hitting his spine like thrown pebbles. But as he walked down the steps, he heard Jonas's voice, low, tight, angry. "You don't go wandering alone in storms like this. What were you thinking?" Mrs. Harwood didn't answer, or maybe the storm swallowed her words. Elias only knew something heavy had shifted between them, something he didn't understand. The next morning, Jonas called Elias to the barn. Elias's stomach tightened. He expected punishment, maybe for being alone with Mrs. Harwood, maybe for daring to touch her arm even though she'd been falling. But Jonas surprised him. "You're strong," Jonas said, leaning against the stall doors. "And loyal, from what Ma keeps preaching. I've got work out in the north field. Hard work. Tree fall, uprooted fencing. You'll handle it with me." Elias blinked. "Yes, sir." Jonas studied him, as if searching his face for something. "My mother said you pulled her free yesterday, that you kept her safe." The words came out reluctantly. "So, you'll stay near the house more often. If she needs something, you'll be sent." Elias didn't know how to respond. Being assigned near the house meant being watched. It meant Jonas didn't trust him, or maybe he didn't trust something else. Jonas's voice sharpened. "Don't look confused. I'm telling you where you belong. That's all." Elias lowered his head. "Yes, sir." But when he returned to the quarters that night, Mariah pulled him aside. "You keep your wits sharp now," she whispered. "When a white man watches too close, trouble's never far behind." "I didn't do anything," Elias said. Mariah touched his shoulder, one of the few gestures of comfort allowed in a world where comfort was scarce. Sometimes that's exactly what makes trouble, not doing anything. As the storm clouds cleared over the next few days, the plantation settled into a strange quiet. Jonas's orders became unpredictable. Sometimes he kept Elias close, almost within sight. Other times he sent him far from the house as if he wanted distance. And Mrs. Harwood, she carried herself differently now. Not fearful, but shaken, watching the windows more often, turning quickly at faint noises. Whatever she'd been arguing about with her son that morning in the hallway, it wasn't resolved. And Elias, without wanting it, had been pulled directly into the center of their conflict, whether he wanted to be or not. Something was coming, something none of them could stop. The heat settled thick over the plantation the following week, the kind that made even the cicadas too tired to sing. Everywhere Elias went, sweat clung to his back and the earth felt baked under his bare feet. But it wasn't the heat that made the air feel heavy. It was Jonas Harwood. Jonas had become unpredictable in a way that meant trouble for everyone. One day he barked orders without looking at anyone's face. The next he paced the grounds as if searching for something, muttering under his breath. He drank more than usual too, especially at noon, when the sun was at its worst. Drunk men with power were a danger Elias had known all his life. Mariah noticed it too. She whispered warnings at every chance she got. "I've seen men like him before," she said one night as Elias scrubbed a kettle clean. "When things ain't going right in their head, they start looking for someone to blame, someone lower than them, someone they think can't fight back." Elias swallowed hard. He knew exactly who she meant. But the danger wasn't just Jonas's temper. It was whatever quiet argument simmered between him and his mother. Mrs. Harwood moved like a woman carrying a secret too heavy to keep but too dangerous to speak. Sometimes she opened her mouth as if to say something, then stopped and looked away. One morning she called for Elias to help carry boxes from the attic. Jonas appeared in the hallway almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting. "Why him?" Jonas snapped. "Because he's strong," she answered calmly. "And because you said yourself he should stay near the house." Jonas stared at Elias then, his jaw tightening. But he didn't argue. He stepped aside, though his eyes never left them as they walked up the stairs. At the attic door, Mrs. Harwood paused with her hand on the knob. "You don't have to be afraid," she said quietly. Elias didn't look up. "I'm not afraid, ma'am." "You are," she said, not unkindly. "And you have reason, but I won't put you in harm's way." He didn't know how to respond to that. He only nodded and followed her inside. The attic held years of dust and boxes stacked so high that the smallest movement stirred up clouds that made them cough. He lifted one crate after another, carrying them down the narrow steps, careful not to slip. On his fourth trip, he found her still standing at the top of the stairs, holding a smaller box, one that didn't look heavy enough to need help. Instead of handing it off, she stared at it as if the wood itself argued with her. "Ma'am?" he asked. She startled slightly. "Sorry." Just taking a moment. Her voice wasn't steady. He noticed her hands trembling around the box. "Should I take it?" he asked gently. After a long pause, she nodded and passed it to him. The wood felt colder than the attic air. When he glanced at the lid, he noticed faint initials carved into the corner. Not hers, not Jonas's, someone else. Mrs. Harwood followed him down the stairs in silence. When they reached the main hall, she touched the box as if she wanted to take it back, then withdrew her hand sharply. "Take it to the sewing room," she said, "and wait there." Wait there? Orders nearly always meant put it down and leave. Waiting inside a house room alone was dangerous. Dangerous in ways Elias had no desire to test. But he followed her request because refusing would raise suspicion. He set the box on the table and stood still, hands folded behind him. The sewing room was small, lined with white curtains and half-finished work draped across wooden frames. He listened to the faint creaks of the house, the buzz of cicadas through the window screens, and footsteps approaching. Mrs. Harwood stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Elias felt his heartbeat spike. Closed doors were never good. She didn't stand close. She kept a full 5 feet of distance between them, but she looked troubled in a way he had never seen. "I have something I need to tell someone," she said quietly. "And you're the only person in this house who isn't tangled in my son's anger." Elias didn't move, didn't speak. He didn't dare guess where this was going. She tapped the box with one finger. Jonas found letters. Old ones. Ones that weren't meant for him. She took a slow breath. He thinks they mean something they don't. And now he's searching for reasons to justify his anger. He's imagining things, inventing betrayals. Her eyes darkened with fear, not fear of Elias, but fear of her own son. "Men like Jonas," she whispered, "don't need the truth. They need a target." Elias felt the hairs on his arms rise. He understood too well. "Ma'am, why tell me this?" he asked cautiously. "Because I've seen the way he's been looking at you, as if you were part of some story he made up to explain his bitterness." She shook her head. "He twists everything into an insult, into a threat." Elias forced himself to draw a slow, even breath. He could feel the walls tightening around him. "What do you want me to do?" She shook her head, frustrated, not with him, but with whatever storm brewed between her and her son. "I don't know," she murmured. "I just needed someone else to know this isn't about you. You've done nothing wrong." Elias wasn't sure if that made things better or worse. At least when a man hated him for a reason, he could avoid the reason. Hatred without a cause was impossible to step around. Then footsteps thudded down the hall. Heavy. Quick. Jonas. Mrs. Harwood stiffened. Her hand flew to the doorknob. She opened it so quickly it looked like she feared being caught in a room alone with Elias. And Elias feared it even more. Jonas stopped in the hall, breath sharp in his chest. His gaze moved from his mother to Elias. Slow. Suspicious. What's going on? Jonas asked through clenched teeth. Mrs. Harwood didn't flinch. I was sorting sewing boxes. Elias brought them down. That's all. Jonas didn't look convinced. His hand gripped the doorframe so tightly his knuckles widened. You're spending an awful lot of time with him lately. Elias fought the urge to step back. Moving suddenly might spark something. Mrs. Harwood held her ground. I spend time with whoever I choose, and I will not explain myself like I'm some child. Her voice hardened. Leave it. Jonas's jaw twitched. We'll talk later. Not if you come with that tone, she replied quietly. Jonas turned and walked off, but his steps were uneven, furious but uncertain. Elias waited until the sound faded. Mrs. Harwood let out a long, exhausted breath. I'm sorry, she said. You deserved none of that. Elias shook his head. Ma'am, it's not your fault. It feels like it is. Her voice cracked just slightly. But listen to me now. Be careful. He's unraveling. And when a man unravels, he looks for the nearest thread to pull. Elias nodded. He didn't trust his voice to speak. Later that evening, after everyone retired, he slipped back to the quarters with a weight in his chest heavier than anything he carried from the attic. Jonas was becoming a danger. Mrs. Harwood was hiding a secret that was driving him half mad. And Elias, stuck in the middle of their storm, had no shield. Something would break soon. And when it did, someone, maybe more than one person, would pay the price. The breaking point arrived on a morning that should have passed quietly. A pale mist rolled over the fields, softening the world to gray. But beneath that calm, trouble had already taken root. Elias didn't know it at first. He woke before sunrise like always, washed at the pump, and joined the others heading out to the cane rows. The overseer, Mr. Talbot, was in an especially foul mood, snapping at anyone too slow to lift their tools. But that wasn't new. Harshness was the language of the plantation. What was new appeared around mid-morning, when Jonas Harwood rode out toward the north fence line at a full gallop, not for inspection, not for field work. It was a desperate kind of ride, the kind of speed a man used when he was chasing something, or someone. Elias didn't see him return, didn't see the tight fury on Jonas's face, the way his hands shook when he dismounted. But he heard the whispers soon enough. Jonas found tracks out by the clearing. Someone been at the storage shed without the master's say. Something missing, something important. Elias felt a slow, steady cold seep into his bones. Secrets made men dangerous, but lost secrets could make them deadly. Near noon, Mariah hurried down to the fields, calling for Elias with a voice held tight as a drawn bowstring. Boy, come on now, she said low. Jonas been asking for you. Said come to the barn. Alone. Elias didn't move. Mariah stepped closer, eyes sharp. Don't give him reason to think you hiding. That'll only make it worse. But listen, keep your words short. Keep your eyes low. And whatever he accuses you of, don't you rise to it. Elias nodded once. The walk to the barn felt longer than crossing the whole plantation. Each step beat loud in his ears. The barn door stood half open, creaking in the light breeze. Inside, Jonas waited, arms crossed, jaw tight, boots tapping a sharp, angry rhythm on the packed dirt floor. You know why you're here? Jonas said. Elias kept his gaze low. No, sir. You sure? Jonas stepped closer. Absolutely sure. Yes, sir. Jonas exhaled sharply, almost a laugh. A dangerous one. You were near the west storeroom last week, he began, and again in the sewing room with my mother. And today, he walked to a workbench and picked up a metal tin, dented at one corner, rusted around the edges, the lid pried open. Inside lay several folded letters. Letters with the same carved initials Elias had seen on the attic box. You recognize these? Jonas asked. No, sir. Someone took them from the attic. Someone rummaged through what wasn't theirs. Jonas's voice rose, gaining heat. Someone was gonna use them against us. Elias said nothing. Jonas's stare burned. This looked like the work of one of mine? A Harwood? No. Someone without loyalty. Someone who doesn't know his place. He took one step forward. Then another. Elias felt the barn tighten around him like a fist. You've been getting too close, Jonas said quietly. To the house. To my mother. To things you've got no business touching. Maybe she trusts you, but I know better. Elias heard the danger behind those words. Not anger alone. Paranoia. Sir, Elias said softly, I don't take what ain't mine. And I didn't touch them letters. Jonas's nostrils flared. Lie again. It's the truth. Jonas's hands went into fists. And for a moment, just a moment, Elias braced himself for a blow. But heavy footsteps approached from outside. The barn door slammed open, wind rushing in with it. Mrs. Harwood. She took in the scene in one sweeping glance. Jonas's posture, the letters on the bench, Elias standing rigid as a board. Her face turned cold. Jonas, she said, you will leave Elias alone. Jonas spun on her. Ma, he's lying. These letters. These letters, she snapped, stepping forward, were taken by you. You came storming into the attic 3 nights ago, tearing through boxes like a drunken bull. Don't rewrite history just because you regret what you found. Jonas's mouth opened, but no words came. Mrs. Harwood turned to Elias. You may go. Right now. Elias didn't hesitate. He moved past her, head bowed, stepping into the sunlight with his heart thundering. He walked until he reached the water pump behind the smokehouse before letting himself breathe deeply. Inside the barn, mother and son argued, harsh, broken voices carrying through the dust-thick air. Words like ashamed, obsessed, and not your enemy drifted faintly on the breeze. Elias couldn't hear everything, but he heard enough to know this. Whatever Jonas found in those letters, it had nothing to do with him, but Jonas wanted it to. When the shouting died, Elias stayed hidden behind the pump, waiting. After a long while, Mrs. Harwood emerged from the barn with steps that were too steady, the kind of steadiness a person forced on themselves after breaking inside. She paused at the edge of the smokehouse, spotting Elias. You didn't deserve that, she said. Her voice was softer now, but also tired. None of it. Elias didn't meet her eyes. He kept his gaze on the dirt. I understand, ma'am. I don't think you do, she said. Jonas is hurting. But pain doesn't excuse harm, and you've become the nearest target for him to strike. I'll stay out of his way, Elias said. She shook her head. That won't be enough. A chill rolled through him. Her voice lowered. I'm telling you this plainly. He doesn't trust me anymore. And you, he sees you as part of whatever he's built up in his mind. That makes you unsafe here. Very unsafe. Elias felt the truth settle like a stone in his stomach. Something had changed. Something that couldn't go back to the way things were. That night, Jonas didn't come to supper. His chair at the large dining table sat empty, shadows stretching across it as the sunset faded. Mrs. Harwood excused herself early. The servants whispered nervously. Even the overseer seemed uneasy. Men like Jonas didn't disappear into silence. They stewed. They planned. They waited. Elias lay awake long after the others had fallen asleep. Crickets filled the night with a restless hum. Every crack of a branch outside, every shift of wind against the walls made his muscles tighten. Mariah sat beside the dying fire, watching the door. You ain't safe, she murmured. Not no more. I know, Elias whispered. You gotta keep your head low, keep your steps soft, and pray you don't cross paths with Jonas in a dark hallway. But Elias knew something else. Sooner or later, crossing paths would be unavoidable. Because Jonas had already decided Elias was part of the problem. And men looking for someone to blame never stopped until they found a way to punish them. The night the storm rolled in, everything changed. Not the kind of storm that rattled windows for an hour and moved on. This one crept across the horizon like an army, slow, heavy, full of warning. By dusk, thunder grumbled low like distant cannon fire. The sky dimmed to a bruised purple. Even the animals sensed what was coming. The horses kicked restlessly in their stalls, and the chickens refused to leave the roosts. Elias felt the pressure in the air long before the first lightning split the sky. He worked inside the main house that evening. Mariah had sent him to fix a loose window shutter before the wind tore it free. Every creak of the old wood made him twitch. Every flicker of light sent a shadow sliding across the hallway. He kept expecting Jonas to appear. He kept expecting something to break. And when thunder cracked overhead, shaking dust loose from the rafters, he nearly flinched. Mariah poked her head through the kitchen doorway. "Storm's gonna be bad," she whispered. "You finish up and get on out of here." "Yes, ma'am," Elias said. But before he could leave the front parlor, a voice called down the stairs. "Elias!" He froze. Mrs. Harwood stood at the landing, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her face looked pale in the dim lantern light, but her eyes carried a fear he had only seen once before. The night she woke him. "Ma'am," he said carefully. "Come upstairs," she whispered. "Please." Something in her tone told him this wasn't about letters anymore. Lightning flashed through the window, illuminating her features sharply. She clutched the railing as if steadying herself. Elias climbed the stairs slowly, each footstep soft, cautious. "What's wrong, ma'am?" he asked when he reached her. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned and led him down the hallway toward Jonas's room. His heart stepped into a faster rhythm. "Ma'am, is he here?" "No," she said, though her voice lacked certainty. "Or he wasn't. Not when I checked." She stopped at Jonas's door, fingers trembling around the doorknob. "Elias," she whispered, "I need your help, and I know the risk it puts you in, but I have no one else in this house who will act with clarity. Jonas." Jonas is past listening to reason. Thunder boomed again. Rain battered the roof. Mrs. Harwood pushed open the door. Inside, Jonas's room looked ransacked, drawers open, blankets torn from the bed, papers scattered across the floor. A chair lay overturned near the desk. The glass from a lantern glittered in shards beside the dresser. The chaos wasn't the result of anger alone. Someone had searched for something. Desperately. Elias stepped inside cautiously. His voice remained low. "When did this happen?" "Within the hour. He's been disappearing into the storm all evening, coming and going like a restless spirit." Her breath shook. "He's convinced someone is betraying him. That someone is after him. And he is certain, absolutely certain, that you're part of it." Elias felt his stomach tighten. "He thinks I stole them letters," Elias said quietly. "He thinks more than that now," she whispered. Lightning burst white across the window, revealing something Elias had not seen before, carved into the desk surface. A mark! A single letter scratched deep into the wood. "E." Mrs. Harwood's breath hitched. "He carved your initial." Elias stared at it. The grooves were fresh, splintered, jagged with rage. "He's hunting you," she whispered. "Tonight." Elias swallowed, throat dry. "Ma'am, I would never harm him. You know that." "I do." Her voice cracked. "But he doesn't." She took a shaky step closer, lowering her voice further. "Listen carefully. He's not in his right mind. He's created an enemy in his imagination, someone he can chase, blame, punish. And he's chosen you." The storm roared outside, wind slamming against the shutters. Elias felt each gust like a warning. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Mrs. Harwood looked toward Jonas's desk, then back at Elias, her jaw tightening with decision. "I want you to survive this night." Before he could respond, footsteps pounded outside. Heavy, angry. Elias's muscles tensed. "Jonas." Mrs. Harwood's eyes widened. "Into the wardrobe now." "Ma'am, now." Her voice left no room for argument. Elias moved silently across the room as she hastily righted the overturned chair, trying to make the room appear less chaotic. Elias slipped inside the wardrobe just as Jonas's door burst open, banging against the wall. Jonas stood soaked from the storm, hair dripping, shirt plastered to his skin, boots muddy. His eyes were wild, red-rimmed, unfocused. "Where is he?" Jonas demanded. Mrs. Harwood didn't flinch. "Who?" "Don't play with me," Jonas snarled. "I know he came up here. I know he's been sneaking around the house, stealing, spying, whispering in the walls." Elias stayed perfectly still, barely breathing. Mrs. Harwood lifted her chin. "Elias has done no such thing." "Then why did I find this?" Jonas reached into his coat and threw something onto the floorboards. A scrap of cloth. Dark. Worn. Elias's stomach dropped. His own sleeve cuff, torn days earlier on the stable door. He hadn't even noticed it missing. Mrs. Harwood stared at it, then at her son. "Jonas, you found that outside. Anyone could have dropped it." "No." Jonas's voice cracked, hoarse and desperate. "He's been watching me, Ma. Listening. Plotting with someone, maybe with you." Mrs. Harwood recoiled. "With me." Lightning struck so close the windows rattled in their frames. The wardrobe felt suffocating, the darkness thick. Elias could hear his heartbeat like a drum against his ribs. Jonas stepped closer to his mother. "I'm not blind," he hissed. "I see the way you talk to him. Protect him. Trust him more than your own blood." "Jonas," she whispered, "you're ill. You need rest. You need help. I need answers." He slammed his fist into the desk, rattling the wardrobe doors. Elias closed his eyes, praying he wouldn't be discovered. Mrs. Harwood didn't retreat. "Jonas, calm yourself. Nothing good will come of. Where is he?" Jonas roared, voice raw. Her silence answered for her. Jonas's breathing grew sharp, ragged. "You're hiding him." Then he moved toward the wardrobe. Elias felt cold spread through his limbs. The doors creaked as Jonas reached for the handle. Mrs. Harwood stepped between him and the wardrobe, blocking him with her small frame. "Enough," she said firmly. "Move," Jonas growled. "No." Lightning flashed again. Jonas reached for her arm. She didn't flinch. "You're going to hurt an innocent man," she said quietly, "and you will not do it while I stand here." Jonas hesitated. His hand trembled. His breath came in uneven bursts. Mrs. Harwood's voice softened. "Jonas, please, look at yourself. This isn't you." For a moment, for a fragile heartbeat, Jonas wavered. Uncertainty cracked through the fury in his eyes. But then thunder boomed, and whatever fragile restraint held him collapsed. Jonas shoved past her, reaching for the wardrobe doors. And that was the moment Elias made his decision. His moment of truth. He couldn't hide while she suffered his consequences. He couldn't let her take the blow meant for him. Before Jonas's hand wrapped around the handle, Elias threw the doors open himself and stepped out, palms up. "I'm right here," he said steadily. Both Jonas and Mrs. Harwood froze. Elias's voice didn't shake. "I'm not hiding. I wasn't spying. But if you've been looking for me, you found me." Jonas stared at him with a strange mixture of triumph and fury. Mrs. Harwood's breath hitched in fear. Elias did not look away. For the first time since this began, he faced Jonas fully. No fear in his eyes, no guilt, only quiet resolve. This was his choice, to step into the open rather than let an innocent woman be harmed in his place. It was a dangerous choice, maybe even a fatal one. But it was the only choice that let him keep his dignity. The storm roared outside. And inside that small room, everything held still as Jonas took one step toward Elias. Then another. The night was about to break. The sun rose softly over the fields as though afraid to disturb what remained of the night before. Dawn crept over the plantation like a trembling hand, touching everything that had survived the chaos: shattered lanterns, broken branches, muddy footprints, the blood-stained corner of Ezekiel's shirt where he had shielded Amelia's son. The world looked quieter, but not calmer. It looked like a story that wasn't sure how to end. Ezekiel stood by the edge of the woods, shoulders squared though his body ached everywhere. He hadn't slept once. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of steel, heard shouts echoing through the dark, felt the weight of the moment Amelia's terrified boy had clung to him. He didn't know what would happen next. He only knew that a man like him rarely lived long after a night like that. Behind him, the house loomed, white columns smeared with smoke, a shutter torn loose, a window broken. The overseer's men had dragged the intruders' bodies away before dawn, but the place still carried the bitter smell of gunpowder and fear. Footsteps approached slowly along the dirt path. Ezekiel turned, expecting an overseer, perhaps even the sheriff. Instead, he found Amelia stepping toward him, her hair pulled back hastily, her dress wrinkled from the long night. She carried a blanket draped around her shoulders, though her arms shook as if she were cold from something deeper than the morning breeze. She stopped a few feet from him as though unsure what she had the right to say. "You saved my son," she whispered. Ezekiel almost looked away. "Ma'am, anybody would have done the same." "No," she said softly, "not anybody." The silence between them felt like an entire field, wide, delicate, dangerous to cross. Ezekiel kept his eyes on the rising sun because he didn't dare meet hers. "They'll be looking for someone to blame," he said carefully. "Nights like that, folks don't want to believe it just happened. They'll say someone caused it, someone opened the door, someone led those men here." His voice tightened. "They'll say it was me." Amelia's jaw trembled. She took a breath that looked like it hurt. "My husband already asked questions." The overseer tried to hint at things. "I told them both exactly what happened. I told them I heard noises, woke my son, and Ezekiel was the first man I saw protecting him. I told them if they accuse you, they accuse me, because I was there every moment." Ezekiel's brows drew together. "You spoke for me? I stood between you and their anger," she said, voice shaking but steady. "And I will again." He swallowed hard. He had expected many things that morning: chains, accusations, a bullet if the wrong man decided a story needed to be rewritten, but he had not expected her courage. "You could get yourself in trouble," he murmured. "I already am," she whispered, looking down at her hands. "Not in the way they think, perhaps. But I crossed a line that can't be undone." She exhaled slowly. "I trusted you, more than I should have. More than is safe for either of us." Ezekiel lowered his head. "Ma'am, the world don't take kindly to that." "I know," she said. "But pretending it didn't happen won't undo anything." For a moment she looked out toward the barn where her son was sleeping inside, guarded by two men her husband had posted there. "When you lifted him into your arms," she said faintly, "I thought I was watching a miracle. A black man holding a white child like he was his own. And no fear, no hesitation, just pure instinct to protect." She blinked back tears. "That's not a small thing, Ezekiel. Not in this place. Not in this time." He didn't answer. He couldn't. The words she spoke felt like a gift and a wound all at once. She stepped closer. "I want you to know something." Her voice dropped low, trembling as though she was standing too close to a truth she had run from for too long. "Last night wasn't the first time I depended on you. It was simply the first time I admitted it." Ezekiel's chest tightened. "Ma'am, we ain't allowed to depend on each other. Folks see things wrong even when they see nothing." "Let them," she whispered fiercely. "Let them talk. Let them gossip. I am done living in fear of shadows." He shook his head. "You can't say things like that." "But I feel them," she said, almost desperate. "I feel them, and I don't know what to do with it." Ezekiel took a slow breath, grounding himself. Then he spoke softly but firmly. "What happened last night don't change what I am in this place. You know that. I know that. And if anyone else even suspects you trust me, it won't be me they hurt first. It'll be you, or your boy." Her eyes glistened with the weight of that truth. "This world don't want us acting like people," he said. "Not to each other. Not like equals. And yet," she whispered, voice cracking, "you treat me like one." Ezekiel looked away again, jaw tight. "That's because you treat me like a man, not a tool, not a burden, Just a manual. Amelia's breath trembled, and for a moment she pressed her hand to her chest as though the words struck her too deeply. After a long silence, she straightened. My husband leaves for Savannah tomorrow. He won't return for 2 weeks. During that time, I can shield you. I can rearrange work duties, keep you away from the overseer, ensure no one questions your loyalty. Ezekiel frowned. Why would you do all that for me? Because I owe you, she said simply. My son owes you. And because, her voice faltered, because I don't want the world to take you from this place before you have a chance to breathe like a free manual. Ezekiel's heart pounded. Free? She nodded slowly. There are ways, papers, purchases, legal paths that are difficult, but not impossible. I can't promise anything, but last night showed me something clear. Her blue eyes lifted and met his. You deserve more life than this place wants to give you. He stared at her, unsure whether he was hearing truth or hope or both. Why tell me now? He whispered. Because last night I thought you might die, she said, and something inside me broke at the idea. The words hung between them, dangerous, powerful, unspoken in their deeper meaning. Ezekiel stepped back slightly, not out of rejection, but out of instinct, knowing how fragile the moment was. Ma'am, whatever you feel, whatever I feel, it can't live in the open. I know, she said softly, but it can live in truth. He shook his head slowly. Truth don't keep folks safe. No, she agreed, but lies keep them trapped. A long, painful silence followed. Then Amelia offered him something he had not expected, a small, solemn nod, as if accepting that the path ahead would be steep, uncertain, and dangerous for them both. Go rest, she whispered. I'll handle whatever comes this morning. If anyone questions you, they'll answer to me first. Ezekiel hesitated. And you? Who answers to you? She looked toward the horizon, where the sun finally broke free of the tree line. Maybe one day, she murmured, I'll answer to myself. He didn't understand fully, but he knew the sound of a woman refusing to be silent anymore. He bowed his head slightly. Thank you, Amelia. She lifted her eyes. Hearing her name from his lips did something to her, something quiet but undeniable. She didn't smile. She simply breathed, as though the world suddenly felt more real. Rest, Ezekiel, she repeated gently. The day is long, and you've carried too much of it already. He turned and walked toward the row of cabins. Each step felt heavy, not from exhaustion, but from the knowledge that something profound had shifted, something that could not be named or undone. Amelia watched him until he disappeared behind the trees. Only then did she whisper to the empty morning air, I'll protect you, whatever it costs me. And as the plantation stirred awake around her, she wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders, already bracing for the battles she knew were coming. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. The narrator's voice settled like a soft wind across the fields, closing the story with the tenderness of a truth learned painfully and honestly. Sometimes the bravest thing two people can do in a broken world is simply to see each other, fully, fearlessly, without shame. Because seeing someone's humanity, when the world insists you look away, is its own kind of freedom, its own kind of rebellion. And sometimes, it is enough to change everything.